Today I'll talk to you all about nostalgic board games, or these games that give us these feelings of nostalgia. Oftentimes growing up, these would come with some interesting commercials.
The game where you've got to sneak into the kitchen for a snack without waking Daddy. Land on a noise, and you have to press Daddy's alarm clock. Will he wake up?
Wake Daddy. Don't wake Daddy. From Parker Brothers.
Alright, so a lot of times these games would be coming up with those commercials. A lot of times they would have mechanics where the end game was total annihilation, whether making all your opponents run out of money or making all of your opponents completely obliterated from the map, and not at the same time, so there'd be a lot of player elimination issues. Sometimes the games would be mostly pointless after you get the basic strategy. Sometimes the games would just be roll and move, and you wouldn't even be able to make any strategy. And you get what I'm saying. A lot of times these games weren't very good. Of note, they did have some pretty cool dexterity games back then, whether it's putting things into something before a time limit knocks them out in perfection, or the reverse of that, taking things out in some sort of fashion to not make it the guy's nose beep. And then we had variants of them. So Don't Wake Daddy, Don't Wake Hulk. You had variants of Battleship, Risk, variants of Monopoly. You still have those, but a lot of times these games were not well designed either in the what you do on your turn or how they end. Now, Key to the Kingdom was one of those roll and move games, and it had a lot of criticism. Children's game from the roll and move era. Enemies are defeated with various convoluted rolls in an attempt to bring flavor and mask the fact that their results are still entirely random. The shifting game board is truly innovative, but it can't save the game from bad and bland mechanics. 2 out of 10. Roll to move, roll to win, roll to everything. And a final critic, just one word: why? So a lot of criticism with these games is just one of many, but this fellow says what we're all thinking about our favorite nostalgia games. And their reasoning being why they gave it a 10 out of 10 is because it brought them feelings of, well, I'll just read it. Growing up, we didn't have much. My mom was a single parent, and board games were a luxury we couldn't afford. But what I did have was a boundless imagination, so they would design board games on the back of cereal boxes. One Christmas, when I was 12, I received a surprise gift in the mail from my dad, who lived 16 hours away. I hadn't seen or heard from him since my parents separated when I was 5. The moment was thrilling. Opening that package felt like uncovering buried treasure. Inside was a board game, Key to the Kingdom. It became my favorite. Fueled by my creativity, I made expansions for the game, extending its adventures far beyond the board. I want to play their game with the expansions. All right, so over the years, though, I lost the game and all the creations I had poured my heart into. We moved houses every 6 months, as my mom didn't want my dad to know where we lived. With no room in the car for my belongings, everything I had made was thrown away. Just fleeting memories of childhood filled with creativity and hope. Yet that game from my dad remained a spark of light, a reminder that someday I might rediscover the key to the kingdom and find my life's adventures again. So that brings up one of the many things that I think these nostalgia games do is bring back memories of loved ones, and two, bring back memories of a more creative time in our more childlike state without the monotony of life and just creating expansions on the back of cereal boxes. So when we were in a more creative state, those memories come back, those creative states, and also memories of loved ones, potentially loved ones that have passed or we're out of contact with, and really remembering hard times that we got through. Sometimes reminiscing on the hard times in when life gets better kind of helps you. So we want to go back and play those games. Here are 5 games that are my personal top 5 nostalgia games. Okay, These are not just like a guilty pleasure, like I like them just because they're, uh, I know they're not good or something like that. Some of them are actually very good. These are games that remind me of my childhood, just like maybe you see this five right here and you're thinking playing hopscotch as a child. All right, so here is Stop Thief.
Is Stop Thief, a computerized cops and robbers game where an electronic crime scanner gives you clues
Door.
to catch an invisible thief.
A broken window.
Footsteps.
In Stop Thief, when you think you know where the thief is, make the arrest.
Here come the cops.
I think you got him.
9-volt battery not included. Stop Thief, an electronic cops and robbers game from Parker Brothers.
All right, so Stop Thief, that's my number 5 game. 6.4 out of 10 on Board Game Geek and 1.68 out of 5 for how complex the game is. I would say that's pretty fair ratings. However, I liked Stop Thief a little more than a 6. The only issue being, I think that it would have been cooler to have more modernized mechanics, like instead of roll to move, something else, right? And also special powers potentially for these different crooks you were trying to catch or the different characters you were. Like Sherlock Holmes is different than Carrie Badger or any of the other characters that you could be in the game. And what they lacked in special abilities and cool mechanisms, they made up for in the flavor text for these. You have Bunny and Claude, and you go and ask your parents, who's Bunny and Claude? And they go, oh, it's Bonnie and Clyde, and they teach you a little bit about culture. And then Hans Off. Why is that funny, parents? Well, because Hans is like a German name, but hands off would be a pickpocket, haha, right? And so Saltine the safecracker. You get it, right? So here are some things that people said about the game. Okay, some good, some bad. And then they made a actual restoration of the game. So no 9-volt battery required anymore, and now it's jumped up to a 7 instead of a 6.5 out of 10 or whatever that was, right? And then weight complexity actually went down, I believe. Now this restored game, this is the only one that I'll show that has a restored version. It's really good, and I'm glad that it came back. And I instantly bought it. And one time I went to a thrift store and actually found my kid version of the game, the one that required the 9-volt battery instead of a cell phone. And I didn't buy it because I already had this restored version, and I felt the same type of nostalgia without needing to play the older version. So that's the dream. That's what you want to have. Also, instead of the roll and move mechanics, you had different sets of cards that each player had. Some of them moving even 10 spaces away, and some of them just being really fast or very slow, but different special abilities based on the cards they played. And so that was very cool that they added that. Also, the different crooks that you had in the game, they had different powers as well, I believe. and the mechanics were more streamlined. I liked it better. I think the 30 to 60-minute time frame on it, that's fair. There's some things, and but then you'll always have the haters that say, or the original is much better, but there's some comments they had for the game. Comparing them, better rating, jumped 0.6 points, lowered in its weight complexity. The 30-minute time versus 30 to 60-minute time, I feel like the Stop Thief older one was not actually shorter. It's just that people would stop playing around 30 minutes. I don't think that this is actually accurate. I think it's probably more than 30 minutes playing time. But back in the day, is very easy to just say, "All right, we're done playing Monopoly. We're gonna quit it because it's gonna take forever for everyone to run out of money and go bankrupt." Or we're done playing Risk. It's gonna take forever for everyone to get fully knocked out of this game. So those playing times didn't matter as much. Now with more modern board games, I'd say argue that it matters more. So that's a comparison there. It's the only one I'll do. But we're on to number 4. Fourth place in my heart. Pokemon games. This is a cheater choice. I'm actually picking 3 different games, but any of the Pokemon games. I loved Pokemon as a kid. I don't even know the Pokemon after the 150 Pokemon. I know they came out with 100 more as I was getting older, and I just okay. So now there's 250 Pokemon I gotta keep track of. Okay, well I gotta focus on like taking middle school tests and homework and everything, and I can't do that anymore. But in elementary school, yeah, sure, I remembered all this stuff. The first one being the battle discs. You'd flip these coins. I think it has a 2 out of 10 on Board Game Geek, so not very high. But they would come with cute little figures, and they tried to make a game out of it. Then next is Pokemon Junior, and then after that is the Master Trainer. So Pokemon Junior adventure game, Pokemon Emergency. This was uh, a Wizards of the Coast design, and really was a little start to role playing games essentially, because you'd go through a book, and in that booklet, it would tell you which Pokemon were coming up in the book. And you had different paths you'd go down, but ultimately they all led to a final emergency adventure. And you'd have to roll dice and defeat Pokemon and catch the Pokemon. So when you would have a Pokemon battle, you would roll these dice and or roll a die, and if you scored a 2 to 6, you'd get 1 hit against an opponent Pokemon's hit points. Is a pretty streamlined combat system, and you'd have these damage counters, and I think there were even confusion and different things like that that could affect things in the game. So, a little bit of an introduction to role playing games. I think I would like to buy this again and play this with my daughter. But here are some comments about it. Great starter light RPG. So now Pokemon Master Trainer 1993 or 1999. This was, I know there's other Master Trainer ones, but this one was one that everybody really loved and remembers probably. Even the front box showing you all the evolved form evolutions of each of the Pokemons. Like that was a great front box cover. I feel like this had the potential to be a really cool board game, and with they could have done like different Pokemon types. I think they could have added. It would have added to the complexity, but I think that would have been even more exciting. And somebody has made their own version of it with different types. Like this is a grass type that does well against water but bad against fire, I guess, fire types. But they've created their own pogs, so people have really gone crazy with this. But I remember on the board you would go from the pink easy Pokemon, and then you would go into the tougher Pokemon. Then you could have a choice to do like medium tough to super tough ones, and trying to get one of these 4 legendary Pokemon, the 3 legendary birds or Mewtwo, and use them to eventually defeat one of the final gym leaders and win the game. Now, there was a trade another Pokemon with somebody, and the worst trade difference you could do would be a Goldeen with a Mewtwo, and you'd force them to trade that. That would be just crazy. And to catch these Pokemon, you would have to roll correctly, but you could use a Great Ball, Ultra Ball, or Master Ball to catch them. even better. So a Master Ball would add 1, 2, 3, or 4 to your roll. So if you rolled a 2, you could add 4 to it, you'd get 6, and then you capture Zapdos. And then you use Zapdos's 9 attack to defeat Gary. I think that's how the game mechanics worked. I don't quite remember how the attacks went. Alright, but that was Pokemon Master Trainer. In the end, you just try to defeat the final boss, and once you defeat him, you win it. Here's a lot of things that people said about the game. I love owning this game for the theme and its rarity, but very linear, very basic. This person says, this game is so bad it defies description, a black hole of fun. Aw. This person says, still play this with my boys who are huge Pokemon fans. High luck factor means even my 3-year-old can win. And he has. Oh, bragging rights. They just love the endless variety of Pokemon and often keep playing after a winner is decided, which is fine for younger attention spans. One of the best thrift store finds ever. All right, so yeah, that is the exciting thing. Plus, somebody gives it a 10 out of 10 for a nostalgia bonus. And yeah, the feelings that I feel from this are just remembering Pokemon was crazy times. People loved Pokemon, and just the hype of the IP sometimes, these older IPs. I know Pokemon still has its longevity, and people who loved Pokemon back then still love it now and still follow it and go out and play whatever that is to catch Pokemon. I forgot what it even is called. You guys know what it is. Pokemon Go? Yeah, Pokemon Go outside. Anyhow, moving on to number 3. Battle Masters. All right, this one had a huge, ginormous mat. You can kind of see.
In the land of Muldark or the River Quell, the battle masters fought and many fell. Great armies marched against an evil power to win back the land and the ancient tower. Battle masters, the game of orcs and ogres, wolf riders and more, versus knights and archers, and the cannons roar. Command your armies, you must not fail. It's good versus evil on an epic scale. Battle masters, from the makers of Hero Quest.
Alrighty, so Battle Masters 6.4 out of 10, less than 2 complexity. It had cool custom dice. 3 of the sides I remember were skulls. That was a hit. 1 of the sides was a shield. That was a block. This person's rolling 4 die, and this person's rolling whatever Wolf Riders would roll. And yep, you just roll them, attack. There wasn't any situation where one type of unit was better at attacking another unit. That would have been kind of cool. I don't think there was, at least. And then you had 2 special units. The bad guys had a giant ogre, and then the good guys, and it moved based on how much damage it had on it. So you could like weaken the ogre. It took 5 hits to kill the ogre. It took 3 hits to kill another type of creature, I believe. Now, the goal in this game was just to eliminate all your opponent's pieces. You had a big giant mat that you were playing on, and you oftentimes have to break your back just sitting down and moving the pieces. But that wasn't too much of a problem for us kids. Yeah, very cool. An ogre champion, wolf riders, the champions of chaos, orcs, goblins, beastmen, chaos warriors, chaos archers. What am I talking about? Those were all the bad guys' side. And then on the good guys' side, you would have these imperial knights, the lord knight, the best ones, men-at-arms, imperial archers, crossbowmen, and the mighty cannon. The cannon was kind of cool. When it would shoot out, you would place out a target on where the person was trying to be hit. So I guess the target didn't matter. They didn't put the target down in this picture. But you'd flip over the cannon tiles. Here's a cannon tile. You'd flip over the cannon tiles, 1, 2, 3, and then finally the final one. If there was no explosion, then you were good. But you could shoot through. You could choose your path to shoot them, and hopefully not shoot one of your own people, because as you'd flip them over, if it was a bounce, then they would deal 1 point of damage to whoever was on that tile for the bounce. So that's 0 damage because nobody's on that tile. This was a total miss. It just kept going. And this was your journey ends here. Your cannonball missed its target, but it hit whatever's on this space. So a full 3 damage to this space. So you use the cannon, take out the ogre, and the ogre has 5 hit points. So that's kind of a fun little thing. I think that's how that would go. All right, here are some comments people said about it. They say, easy to learn rules, and but then somebody says at the same time, this seems like an insane number of models to get in a box game. But at the time, now crazy how things have changed. Now there's even more with Warhammer and all sorts of craziness. This game might not actually be a 10, but holds great nostalgic value for me. Somebody says, you had these different cards. The gameplay was random based on what cards you drew. There was a move whole Chaos Army card. There was a move the whole Imperial Army card. That meant, even though they didn't draw 2 different archers and 2 different men-at-arms, I think that meant you moved every single one of them. You didn't move one of each of them. However, over here, 2 Wolf Riders meant, I think you did do 2 Wolf Rider movements. This one was 1 crossbow or 1 bone Chaos Archer, 1 Chaos Imperial Knight, and 1 Chaos Horseman. And yeah, you would just have these different. You would draw from the deck, and it would tell you whose turn it was and what they would do on their turn. So this one right here meant the Chaos or the Champions of Chaos would move, and the Wolf Riders could get a move. Important to note, sometimes they would move with more strength. So if they attacked that turn, it would be higher die rolls. And sometimes they would, so you'd have to time that right. And sometimes when they would move, they would do a double move. So you could use the Wolf Riders to go catch the catapult and take it out early. Here's the makeup of all the cards in the game. And here's a list of how many dice each would roll to attack. 5 dice would be the most that any of them would roll. These were the power hitters. The Ogre Champion would roll 4, but they could attack quite a bit because they would get as many movements as I think damage they had. But those are the basic rules. People could study these cards and see the percent chance of hitting. And now we move on to my second favorite game, Tower of the Wizard King. So, Tower of the Wizard King. So it's 5.9, so not very high. Everybody I've played this with has, some of them have loved it, but a lot of them are like, all right, when's this game going to end? Unfortunately, I think it's a great game. It's kind of got a little bit of paper rock scissors mechanics with the combat. It's probably the most complex of the 5 that I'm going to be going over, but not too bad. Basically, whenever you attack in this game, you have a choice to transform into a new of these 8 different, like skeleton, dragon, ogre. It's based on a magical timeline where this setting is kind of crazy. Polymorph magic is key, and all the wizards are just like Merlin and whoever in the old Sword in the Stone cartoon movie of Disney, where when they do a wizard duel, they polymorph into different creatures. So polymorph magic is the big thing, and you have 4 wizard brothers that are all trying to vie for the throne to be the Wizard King. And every time they fight, if they ever transform, they use polymorph magic. The Wizard King moves up 1 more space up this little ladder until they get to the top, and then a winner is declared. The winner is declared based on how many pennants are on all of the castles of each of the players. So these pennants can shift. You'll notice the towers have up to 5 slots for pennants. Every single time a tower is successfully captured, then you add a pennant to it, and you take off all the pennants of one color, and you put on all the new ones, plus that one that I just mentioned. So these castles get more and more powerful to take over, more and more sought after. Additionally, some of the castles were automatic ones that you would automatically be able to take over if you were the correct beast. So the dragon's castle gave 4 penance automatically. The orc's castle, I think, gave 2 penance automatically. All right. There were also more than just polymorph magic. There were some little tokens you could get in the game, like transportation, transformation. Okay, that's also polymorph. Spell of protection, spell of revelation, spell of power. You just add a pennant to somewhere, just gain a point. And then there were 8 different beasts that you could transform into, and they all had their own weaknesses and strengths against each other. Similar to how like a rock can beat scissors and scissors can beat paper, there was a little bit of rock paper scissors going on, and let's see if I can remember how it went. So the dragon really did bad against the warrior, but it excelled at beating everybody else. Okay. The ogre was second strongest, but it really did bad against the dwarf. Okay. The minotaur was third strongest, but it really did, and it did well against everybody except for the dragon and the ogre. But it would do really bad against the elf, like extremely bad. Okay. All of these big shots had their weaknesses with these medium shots. Then there were the medium shots. We'll go over them. The dwarf did well. Next up in power level was the warrior. The warrior did pretty well against the other medium shots, and really well against the skeleton and the orc. But it would do it. Oh no, sorry. The warrior's weakness was the skeleton. Okay, so this guy was like medium high strength. These two were like high strength, and then the dragon was super high strength. And the skeleton could defeat the warrior very easily. I think the warrior even got a bonus if he ever succeeded against destroying the skeleton. Like the skeleton was just super good at killing warriors. Now, that's the warrior able to defeat the orc, the elf, and the dwarf, and especially the warrior could kill the dragon. Now moving down in the power levels, I believe the elf and the dwarf were basically tied in strength, and they each had their one of the big shots that they could take out, dwarf and ogre, elf and minotaur, but and they did well against the skeleton and the orc. And then the skeleton did well just against the orc, but especially well, extremely well against the warrior. And then you have the orc, which was horrible at all of them, but it moved 5 spaces. It was very fast, and it had a special reroll ability that could randomly help it succeed and actually win. So rerolling basically gives an extra die, but it's slightly weaker than having an extra die. Because the way combat worked is you only took the top die, and if you had 2 6s or 2 5s as the top die, then you would go to the second highest die. And so re-rolling a die, if you only had 2 dice against somebody and you had a 6 and a 1, and you re-roll the 1 against somebody who rolls 5 dice and they roll 3 6s, re-rolling the 1 and getting a second 6 doesn't help you. Somebody rolling 5 dice and getting 3 6s, it's 2 6s against 3 6s, you lose. That was crazy math, but yeah. So Tower of the Wizard King, very cool. Yeah, the penance. Oftentimes this little piece would fall off of the main wizard. It looks like it didn't fall off in this picture, though. Lots of little tiny pieces of these flags. And this was one of the first games that I remember where you would have a base that showed you what your color was as you're turning into things. So each game turn, you can choose to change or stay the same. If you make an attack, you do 1 or 2 clicks on the tower to shift it to be the next creature you would be. But we would build house rules and we would just draw one because I didn't want to mess with the tower ultimately. If they ever remade this game, I don't know how they're going to do it without doing the tower, but they need to find a way to make that tower not break on you. And then you would just resolve the turn, and by the end of the game, whoever had the most of these little pennants won. Not too hard to figure out, but here's the math in all of it. You'd have the dragon rolling. You roll 4, 5, 5, 2, 4, 5, 5. So the 2 would be against the warrior. 5 dice against the elf, dwarf, orc, and the skeleton, but only 4 dice against the ogre and the minotaur. Ogre and the minotaur, they're rolling 5 dice against pretty much everybody. Well, 4 dice against the Minotaur. So they're slightly better than the Minotaur. Okay. 4 versus 3. There's not really anything that's the same numbers except for the elf and the dwarf. I think they both roll 4 dice against each other. Yeah, I don't see any same numbers, but all these numbers are accurate with each other. What I mean is, if the skeleton says it rolls 2 against an ogre, and the ogre rolls 5, then you look at the ogre, it says 5 against the skeleton, and 2 that the skeleton will roll. So it all matches up. It just lets you know how strong you would be against the others. That was a very cool thing to see in as a kid. Also, the weaker they were, the skeletons and the orcs, they could move 5 and 4 spaces with the orc to skeleton respectively. The dwarf and the elf were a little bit slower, only moving 3 spaces. Warrior moved 3 spaces, and movement was somewhat important to this game. Also, each of them had a cool special ability, like the warrior gets 2 bonus points instead of just 1 when they defeat the skeleton, which is very rarely going to happen. The Minotaur is going to get move up to 2 spaces immediately after leaving a forest, so that helps their speed. Ogre, I think, had a similar power with the mountains, so helping their speed of being only 2. So you'd strategically do it through forests or through mountains. I don't know why the ogres would do it through forests. I remember asking my parents, like, are there like minotaurs in the forest? What's the deal? And they said, no, they're in labyrinths. And I said, what the heck's a labyrinth? So, and then you have the elves. They can make an extra reroll if they're in the forest. Extra rerolls were basically, like I said, an extra die. So if you're an elf fighting a dwarf in the forest, you're basically getting 5 dice instead of 4 against the dwarf. You have an advantage. Similarly, the dwarf had a similar thing, but when they were fighting in the mountains. The orc had it everywhere. They can make a reroll everywhere. So instead of being 2 to 5 against a dragon, it was actually 3 to 5 for a dragon, which is pretty hard to pull like to do because the dragon was rolling 5 against everybody. And yeah, you look at it. This guy rolls 3 against the dragon. This guy rolls 3 against a dragon. But yeah, he's getting an extra die roll. That's kind of okay for the orc. 3 for the like against a dwarf, I guess he's kind of equal. Against an elf, kind of equal. Against a warrior, weaker. Against an ogre, definitely weaker. Against a minotaur, definitely weaker. Against a skeleton, kind of equal. And then the skeleton had a what they have? They had like ability with the swamp. Yeah, I think they didn't need a bridge or something. And then the dragon, they can move between swamps that and not need a bridge. And the dragon could just cross any river, whether there's a swamp on the other side or not. They're kind of like a super skeleton, I believe. And if all the numbers and math didn't make sense, they just had like a minotaur characteristics. Afraid of elves. Fearless against skeletons and orcs. So anyone that they had like a 2 advantage with against, they would say fearless against, right? And so it basically shows you the little mini paper rock scissors game we have going on.
Welcome to a world of wizards, able to transform into different creatures with new powers. The Tower of the Wizard King, a game of battle, territories, and conquest. Enter the tower as a dwarf. Emerge a raging minotaur. The Tower of the Wizard King. Go into it with an open mind. Come out of it with a whole new attitude. Welcome.
All right, so that was pretty much it with Tower of the Wizard King. I'll show you a little bit of the gameplay you see here. Oh yeah, you put it into the tower, and then that's how you flip your guy, I guess. So he's coming in as an orc, and then emerges with a whole new attitude. All right, he's an ogre now, from orc to ogre. All right, So here are some of the ratings they said about it. One of my favorites, being able to change characters on a whim, is great. This game needs a remake. Yeah, it really does. Come on, Restoration Games, please make Tower of the Wizard game, and Tower of the Wizard King, Battle Masters, and this one that's about to come up. Ready? Number 1. Screamin' Eagles. So Screamin' Eagles, 6.1 out of 10. Pretty easy complexity. And this thing's saying 20-minute playing time, so you have to triple it because people were liars back then. I'd say it probably takes an hour. But honestly, you could end the game in just 5 minutes because it all was based on a lucky die roll a lot of times where you hit your opponent. And you'd have these airplanes flying around. You would program where they would move, whether straight forward or to the right, breaking left. And then you could choose an attack. Your attacks were long range missiles, which would roll 4 range dice. And if you count the spaces up to them, then that would mean you hit them. Medium range, 3 range dice, and cannon would be 2 range dice. Now, the way range dice work would they would just tell you exactly if you would hit or not. So you have, it's 2 to 4 players. I think the 3-player count was the weirdest one because you'd have one person controlling 2 of them. The 2 same colors are on teams, and once you defeat the other team, you just win the game. The way you take damage is you roll 4 dice that are black dice. They're black and red dice. The black dice were showing you, I believe, how far you would move. Yes. And also where you would attack. So those are 3, 6, 7, 8. All the black dice were 1, 2, or 3 on the die rolls. And it would show you on the boards. Let's see if I can find a scene. Okay. So there's one of the boards. I'll just go back. There's one of the boards, and it shows if you roll a 4 on 4, 1, 2, or 3 possible results on 4 dice, then the lowest number you could get is a 4. The highest number you could get, what's 3 times 4? That's 12. So if you rolled that most rare number, then you would defeat your opponent, whether a cockpit kill or a fuel tank kill. It didn't matter, but that's just how it would be done, just auto kill. If you rolled a 10 or 11, you hit the engine. If you hit the engine twice, you take out the opponent. Similar to the tail section, a 5 or a 6 twice, then their tail's gone and they just die as well. And 4 wing shots also kills them. But wing shots are the most common because they would be a 7, 8, or 9. And on 4, basically a 3-sided die, because it was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 on a 6-sided die. On 4 3-sided die, let's see, the average number is going to be 2. 2, 4, 6, 8. So yeah, most of the time you're rolling an 8. And if not, you're probably rolling a 7 or a 9. So that's really where you would hit a lot of the times. So before you would get hit, I think with a long range or medium range missile, you could use a flare to try to mitigate the hit potentially. I don't remember what you could do with that, but I really honestly don't remember how the flares worked. But movement, you would program your movement on breaking right, breaking left, where you were going to go, and how many black die you were going to roll. And it was dice math, really, like trying to do what I just did with counting the wing is the most probable location of getting hit. You would roll like 1, 2, or 3 dice, or even 4 dice, I think, to move your airplane through the skies. And the coolest thing about this game was the wraparounds. So also cannons had restrictions. They could only shoot on these rows. Now, that was critical. This person rolled a 2 and a 5. The range dice were 0, 2, or 5s. So those ones, you could actually roll 2 zeros, and then your missile just didn't go anywhere. But if you rolled a 2 and a 0, it would go 1, 2 spaces, meaning you wouldn't reach your opponent. But a 2 and a 5, like even just a single 5, 1, 2, 3, you hit your opponent. Why there was a 0, 2, and 5? I think it was so that it was pretty well done that way. And 2 of the sides have 2s, 2 of the sides have 5s, 2 of the sides have 0s. But it was well done picking those numbers because A 5 meant, oh, you could shoot really far. A 0 meant there's a chance that all the dice you roll could be 0. Even with that long range missile, which you would think could, maybe you're rolling 4 2s, so that's like 8 spaces away. But you could roll all of them as zeros and then you would just miss. So with every roll of the dice, there was a chance that you could just flat out miss. And then that was a hit, so then they'd roll 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is a wing shot. Yep, so you see the wings right there. They're going to put a pog in the wing and take out their opponent. And that is really how the game is played in a nutshell. I don't remember those flare rules, but you would program where you were going to move first, and you could only shoot planes that were ahead of you. So you wanted to get in a situation where you were on a lower section of the board, not a higher section of the board, but you always had to be moving forward. But the board wrapped around, which was one of the coolest parts about this. So if this red plane goes all the way down this path and hits the 120, they would come back on this 120 right here. Okay, so if they hit this, where's the 90? So if they hit this 90 right here and went either this way or this way, they would come out going this way or this way on this 90. This 80, they would fly back onto this 80. So it was a very cool mechanism because you'd be rolling like, okay, I'm going to program myself to move ahead very fast because I think I need to really move around. But if you're really close to the edge of the map, you only need to roll. These are 3-sided dice, right? So maybe you roll, you're right here and you want to break right to hit the 120 and come back around on this side. So you say, okay, I've got an airplane right here that I want to shoot. I have to be directly behind him in a cone to be able to attack him. And if I'm using a cannon, it has to be a direct straight line or a direct right break or left break. But if it's a missile, then it can actually travel. It has more like if you're sitting in this 120 spot and somebody is in this 180 spot, you can hit them with a cannon. But if they were in this 190 spot, you could not hit them. Now, you could hit them with a missile if they're in this 190 spot because you could just count the spaces. Say you roll the missile, long range missile, and you roll 4 2s. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You could hit it right there, okay, at the 180 spot. But cannon, you only roll 2 of them, and say you roll, 2 5s. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The cannons can't move. It's a straight line. Yeah, and I guess that's just how they decide it. So being able to hit people with the cannons was important because you only had so many missiles. So trying to line up a cannon shot was exciting, and you'd have to math it out really with the averages of the die rolls, and that was an exciting thing because like other than this game, Settlers of Catan had this averaging of die rolls where you'd roll 2 dice and you would be like, oh okay, average is a 7, so 6 or 8 are also pretty close to that average. I'm going to build on a location that's a 6 or an 8 rather than a 2 or a 12. Similar to this thing, you would, if you're sitting right here about to go to this 120 and you want to hit somebody in this 180 section, you could go after your movement, you can attack. So you want to land after your movement where you're right behind them. And you could say, all right, I'm going to break right 1 die roll. And so you roll the die. Let's say you get a 3. You go 1, 2, 3, and now you are directly in line with the 190, not the 180, unfortunately. So you say, okay, instead I'm going to break right and roll 2 spaces, and then on 120, or maybe you rolled a 1, and then you just land right here and you can't attack anybody. You're just sitting duck right here. A lot of things you could consider with, okay, if I roll a 1, is that going to ruin me? Because now the 180 guy flips over on this end, and they've got me in their sights right here. So a lot of mathing out the probabilities of the die rolls, but it was pretty exciting. Really enjoyed Screaming Eagles and played it a lot with my family. Played all these a lot with my family and gives me reminders of those good times that I had growing up and the loved ones that I'll always remember and the fun times that I had with them. The creativity, the laughs, the joy that board gaming ultimately brings. So those were my top 5 nostalgia games. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment below on what your favorite nostalgia board games are and how you might, please tell me how you might restore them for a new modern age, recognizing that a lot of our older games we loved weren't perfect, as all of us are not. So thank you very much as we continue to learn and grow and reminisce on our nostalgia board games. Thanks, everyone, and take care.